Hey guys, human rights attorney Leigh Dundas here. Super big apologies for the lack of hair and makeup. We are out here riding dirt bikes in the desert to celebrate God's country and Thanksgiving, but I felt compelled to do a wrap up on the last 12 hours because they have been nothing short of phenomenal and unparalleled and sizzling. So here we go, guys. Really quickly, Sidney Powell actually filed, in case you hadn't heard, just before midnight in Georgia last night. The 104-page complaint argued, and I quote, incontrovertible evidence that the Board of Elections records demonstrate that at least 96,000 absentee ballots were requested and counted, but were never recorded as being returned to county election boards by the voter. Thus, at a minimum, 96,600 votes must be disregarded. Again, this is in the state of Georgia, and the spread in Georgia was only about 13,000 votes. So at this point, just on that one argument alone, they have more than 7 times what they need with the absentee ballot argument to swing it. But wait, there's more, and this is where it gets really sexy. The complaint also cites, and here I go quoting again, a former electronic intelligence analyst under the 305th Military Intelligence Battalion, who declared that Dominion software was accessed by agents acting on behalf of China and Iran to monitor and manipulate elections, including the 2020 U.S. general election. Furthermore, quoting again, a former U.S. military intelligence expert analyzed the Dominion software and concluded the system and software were, quote, certainly compromised by rogue actors like China and Iran. And that's in another part of the complaint. So there we go, guys. That is some of the key highlights of that 104-page complaint. Based on that, we have the former Kansas Attorney General, who is now working solely on election fraud issues across a number of states, saying as of this morning, quote, we already have suits in 6 states, but we are filing more lawsuits based on this new data. And then it goes on and it gets really exciting. A series of decisions at the local level, funded and encouraged by the flow of more than $350 million of MZ monies. That is the owner of the platform I am on now. MZ monies that allowed for the infusion of questionable or fraudulent ballots into the stream to be counted. The analysis using government data and then calling out to voters, asking them about their behavior and getting them to sign affidavits is that in each one of these swing states, there are hundreds of thousands of ballots in question. Again, in each one of these swing states, there are hundreds of thousands of ballots in question. In addition to the ballots in Wisconsin, up to 150,000 of which were improperly filed and counted, we have identified over 12,000 Republicans who voted and whose votes were not counted according to the Wisconsin state data. The Wisconsin spread, guys, in case you're not familiar with it, was 20,000. So they have 12,000 Republican votes that were never counted, and they have about 150,000 improperly filed and counted, according to other affidavits there. If you want more data, go follow at Rothbard1776 at Twitter. Moreover, last night, if you didn't hear it, right before midnight, a lot of Thanksgiving Day's gifts going on right now, guys. The United States Supreme Court ruled in a 5-4 decision blocking Governor Andrew Cuomo from enforcing limits on how many people can attend religious services in New York, just in time for Thanksgiving. Moreover, another article that came out in the last 24 hours was a media survey that was performed of the swing states. And what they found is that nearly 10% of those in swing states would not have voted for the big guy had they known about the Hunter-China Biden issue. The firm goes on to say that it was media suppression of the story by mainstream news that caused the incorrect vote. When you add that little gem to the fact that in September of 2018, we have an executive order allowing the U.S. to go after actors who spread disinformation, wow, things are starting to get really, really exciting. Now, I just want to wrap up on the Pennsylvania hearing from yesterday. Rudy Giuliani said, I'm quoting, under the law of your state, which is set by you, the legislature, those ballots are illegal. And he was referring to just under 700,000 mail-in ballots where signatures weren't validated and there were other irregularities. Rudy went on to say, the judge mistakenly, in his opinion, said that we wanted to disenfranchise 6 million people. We don't want to disenfranchise anyone. We want to disqualify 682,000 votes so that 74 million people are not disenfranchised, because that is what happened with the cheating that went on here. He then went on to say, and I'll give you another enormously puzzling statistic. You sent out in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania 1.8 million absentee or mail-in ballots. However, in the count for president, you counted 2.5 million absentee ballots. I don't know what accounts for that 700,000 count difference between the number of absentee ballots you sent out and the number of absentee ballots that ended up in the count. But that number of 2,589,000, which was the original number that led them to the discrepancy, was up on your government website until yesterday. And yesterday, it was removed without explanation. And I am going to be very interested in hearing what that explanation is, and I can't imagine you can possibly certify without knowing the explanation to that. As if that weren't good enough news, he went on to state, I'd also like to hear the explanation to the 22,686 mail-in ballots that were returned on the same day they were mailed. That's a trick, right? And how about the 32,591 ballots that were returned the day after they were mailed? Or another 20,000 mail-in ballots that were returned before they were mailed? And the crooks in Philadelphia are disappointed in this next one. They only submitted 8,021 ballots from dead people. It's much easier for dead people to vote by mail than in person, but even so, you had about another 30,000 people doing that, meaning dead people who were voting somehow in person in Philadelphia. He said, we are continuing to check the cemeteries around Philly. He wrapped up, Rudy did, in his opening statement with this, your election, because of these two counties and maybe one other, is a sham. I repeat, he said, it's a sham. It is a disgrace to your state. And finally, I don't need to remind you of this. I need to remind America of this. Your election is not run by the governor of your state or your courts. The U.S. Constitution gives you, i.e. the legislature, gives you the right to run this election. It is the state legislature that controls this process. It is your power. It is your responsibility. And I think you know that you owe it to the people of this state and the people of the United States, because if this happens without consequence, I know crooks really well, is what he went on to say. You give them an inch, they take a mile. You give them a mile, they take your country. So at the end of the hearing, it was a 3.5-hour hearing. I encourage you to watch it in full. One of the guys who helped call the meeting, one of the legislators, said, there is no doubt in my mind that we will pass legislation in the House and Senate based on what we have heard today. And then he turned the floor over to Senator Mastriani, who said, and this guy is fire, guys. If you have not seen the senator, I didn't know who he was until I watched this yesterday. He said, we pulled the trigger on this legislative hearing yesterday morning at 9 a.m. And look what happened here. They got that hearing up and running in under 24 hours on the afternoon before Thanksgiving, folks. That is how important it was. He went on to say, as Jesus said, the truth shall be known. Media, you have found these witnesses that you see out here now. Do your job. It is essential to this republic. And without you doing your job and instead being partisan hacks, this republic can't stand. So now you've got some information. You've got some witnesses. And as a retired Army colonel, I look at these witnesses and say to them, you guys are outstanding. Thank you for being willing to step up. And I am cognizant of the fact that the people on the left are not going to show you much love or tolerance because they don't do that with people they disagree with. So I will say it to you. Thank you for standing. You are warriors for being able to stand and save this republic. So thank you. He went on to say, I'm quoting from John Adams, and we're in Adams County. You know that facts are stubborn things, and there are a lot of hard facts out there. Two things need to happen here. We need to make sure the real winner is sent forth from this election. And number two, we need to fix this so it doesn't ever happen again. You know, I can't believe, he said, we're having this conversation here in Pennsylvania. This is the kind of thing that goes on in Belarus or in Russia under Putin or under Saddam Hussein's Iraq. I mean, really, here in our state, this is disgusting to me. I used to think to myself when looking at those other places, thank God we're not like that. Thank God. What happened to us? What happened? Well, I can tell you we're not going to let it stand. And then he said, you know, one man I saw had a sign saying, democracy dies in Philadelphia. Can you imagine the irony? Where the light of liberty was lit in 1776 that transformed this world. This is no time to let it die. You know, democracy can die in darkness, in dark rooms with no transparency and no accountability. But we are shining the light of this into this darkness here today. We are going to take our state back. We are not standing down in this hour. You know, in 1994, a federal judge in a case in Pennsylvania threw out the election results, took out a state senator, and put a Republican in because the results had been so corrupted. So we do have a precedent here in Pennsylvania. It is one legal vote per person, and any cheating that goes on in here disenfranchises an American. I can't believe this is happening here, and we are not going to let it stand. I don't know why it's so hard. In Galatians 6:9, we are told by St. Paul, grow not weary doing good, because in due time you'll reap your harvest. We are going to reap our harvest. The time for dithering and deliberation is over. It is time for decisive action, Senator Mastriani said. We have to protect our Commonwealth and our nation because the eyes of the world are upon us. Let us turn Pennsylvania from a laughingstock into the pride of the world once again, as we always have been and as we need to be again. This is our day. This is our hour. This is our time. So when Benjamin Franklin was asked, do we have a republic, sir, or a monarchy? Yes, Mr. Franklin, a republic if you can keep it, is what Franklin said. And Mastriani said, we are going to keep it. Can you keep it? Will you keep it? We're going to keep this republic. Thank you, and God bless you all. We stand adjourned. So those are the gifts I have for you for Thanksgiving Day here in America. Go off, eat turkey, have a funeral for your turkey if you need to, if you're in a blue state, and God bless you all.